Come play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever.
What's up, everyone? You got Mind Circus here with you, and welcome to part one of a two-part special edition of Mind Over Meta builds. And today I'm going to be sharing with you one of my lab farming builds. I have two in mind, so to speak, so I'm looking forward to kind of sharing these with you guys and getting your feedback on them, and hopefully getting you into the road of making a little bit more money around Halloween. But before we get started, hey, if you are new to the channel, new to Guild Wars 2, or just haven't done so yet, I am currently farming likes and subscribes in an effort to build the channel. If you want to hit me up with one of those just below the video, that would be greatly appreciated. So for those of you who are unaware, lab farming refers to the Mad King's Labyrinth, which is one of the more popular activities that comes with the annual Halloween event. And the basic idea is that we will be following around a tag, hitting each trash mob once or twice before moving on to the next one. The Labyrinth farm is actually one of my favorite events in any MMOs when it comes to seasonal events. I find it just an incredibly chill way to kind of hang out with people. It's incredibly social, just a little bit of brainless farming, and it's actually pretty popular. So looking forward to kind of getting this into your hands, so to speak. So there are really a lot of different ways you can farm the Labyrinth. These builds that I'm going to be giving you are really meant to maximize your return. They contribute kind of solidly, as well as being really as simple as possible. They're kind of brain dead builds, so I'm not even going to front it with you guys on that. So you're going to see they're simple to play. They're easily the simplest builds I'm going to put up on this channel, really. And they're really meant to minimize some of the pain points of the lab in terms of the cripples and immobes that the enemies cast, while at the same time just being a simple kind of press one play style that I'm hoping you guys are going to enjoy. So before I go on, hey, don't use these builds outside of the lab, guys, please. These builds are super suboptimal in terms of their damage, and that's on purpose. The reality of lab farming is that damage really isn't that important, and there's some etiquette that goes along with lab farming. That's more along with tagging enemies and letting everyone else get their hits in. So one of the worst things you could do when it comes to lab farming is show up on your full Berserker's Dragon Hunter and lay down traps to alpha nuke all the trash mobs. It just screws other people out of loot. So, you know, if you're wondering how to, really maximize your time and enjoyment of it, keep that in mind, that you don't want to go in there and just be, alpha striking everything down. What you actually want to be doing in the lab is just tagging mobs and contributing meaningfully during the boss fights. And these builds are meant to do exactly that and only that. So again, just don't try and run these outside the lab. These vids will be a fair bit shorter than my usual build videos. We won't be getting into strengths and weaknesses. We won't be going into too many demos or anything like that. And I'm actually hoping to keep my rambling at a minimum. And as you will see, the actual gameplay on these is super brain dead simple, so there won't be a lot of demo. There will be some fashion breaks, and I will go over some of the crowd control that we need to do on these builds. And really, that's about it. So without further ado, let us take a look at our engineer build here, and it is Flamethrower Engineer. Alright, so let's take a few minutes to go over the building gear on this one. It's pretty simple stuff, and there's a lot we're actually even not going to be paying attention to, just due to the nature of what we're doing here. So we will start with the gear. If you've watched my previous Hollowsmith video, this is all going to look very, very familiar to you. And the reason being is I'm running Celestial gear on this. This is just the same gear I was running on my Celestial Hollowsmith build. The reason I'm running Celestial gets back to what I said at the beginning. We don't want full damage gear on this. Celestial is a really nice kind of balance. We'll get some appreciable heals on ourselves. We'll get a little bit of boon duration. And most importantly, we're not going to be doing that crazy DPS that's going to, screw people out of their loot as well as we're going on. So I'm just running Celestial Gear with Berserker runes on this. There could be some other choices with the runes, but I didn't want to get too complicated about it. So what's important really to keep in mind on this is, again, as I mentioned in the intro to this, we don't want to be going ahead and using this, crazy full damage gear, on any kind of tune as we're lab farming. We want to make sure that we're kind of balancing things out, making sure that we are taking care of ourselves more than anything else, and really doing it that way. So again, we're running full Celestial Gear. I'm running Berserker runes in here. You could put just about anything you wanted in here really for maximum effect, but it's really not going to make that much of a difference. In terms of the weapons, it really doesn't matter. We're going to be camping Flamethrower on this build, as you're going to see in a few moments. And so, you could run any kind of weapons in here. It doesn't really matter. I'm running the hammer on Scrapper just because of the fashion. And we'll get into that in a few moments. But again, we're not going to be using our main weapons. We are absolutely going to be camping the Flamethrower on this one. So really, it's kind of that simple. Let's go over into the build at this point. In the build, we're going to be running firearms, we're going to be running alchemy, and we're going to be running scrapper. Now, with this build, let me just put this out there. You could absolutely run core NG if you want. The scrapper traits are going to give us a little bit more stability to the build, and that can come in handy. But really, the magic is going to happen on this build specifically in the first two trait lines. So you want to run hollow on this, go ahead. You want to run, core NG, I would go ahead and make sure we're running mecha legs on that one, but I'm running scrapper, and we'll get into it here. In firearms, we're going to be running chemical rounds, gain condition damage. Your pistol skills gain increased condition duration. And it's as good as any of these. You might run high caliber on this, but again, the critical chance on this is not really going to provide us much. Gain expertise. This is just going to increase our condition damage a little bit, and it really isn't important. Again, either of these would be just as fine. Pinpoint distribution might be okay under this scenario, but again, we're not really worried about these two traits. What we're most worried about here is Juggernaut. We are absolutely going to be going ahead and camping the Flamethrower on this one, and what this says is gain might and stability while wielding a Flamethrower. What this is going to do is going to perma stab on us, and it's going to bring our might up to near the cap. Okay, so we're not going to be doing massive damage because again, we're running the Celestial Gear on this, but what we're most worried about here is the stability. This stability is absolutely going to be permad. Now, perma stability in the lab is one of the absolute best things that you can do for yourself, so this one is non-negotiable. The rest of the traits on this build absolutely are. Going into alchemy, over in alchemy, increase your incoming healing effectiveness. This is going to give us a little bit more sustain, but the reason that we're running alchemy is over here in backpack regenerator. Recover health every second when using an engineering kit. We are going to be again camping the Flamethrower, so this is going to provide us massive value in terms of our sustain. We're just going to be passively sustaining, so any kind of engineer build that actually camps any of the kits is going to really benefit a high degree from this trait here. So again, when we're talking about this build specifically, the only two things that I would consider non-negotiable are Juggernaut and backpack regenerator. I'm also going to give the increased heal effectiveness on this, and what this is HGH. Elixirs gain increased recharge and increased durations and grant might. What we're most worried about here is when we use HGH, we're going to be using the elixir here as our heal, and this is going to be bringing back our heal a fair bit quicker. It's also going to give us some protection off our heal and some regen and some swiftness and some might and some super speed. Very powerful skill when we're trading it correctly. So we're definitely going to be running elixir H on this. We'll go over the rest of what we're using down here in a few moments. And finally, I'm going to be running Scrapper, and here disabling a foe grants you barrier. We do have some crowd control effects on this, so we will be actually getting a fair bit of value off this. The other value that we're getting off this is we'll be getting CC off the function gyro, and CC is going to become really important as we're doing boss fights. So, highly going to recommend you go with the Scrapper on this, but again, there's no real pain for taking any of the other ones. Again, as I'll mention, our real big wins here are under alchemy and firearms. We're going to be running expert examination. Stunning or disabling a foe applies vulnerability and weakness to them. The vuln that you're getting off this is obviously a damage increase for everyone, so highly recommend you're going to run this over the other traits if you're going to be running Scrapper. The other two traits here, really not of huge value. Finally, adaptive armor, barriers you receive are stronger, reduce incoming condition damage while you have barrier. This is a nice one. Really, this one isn't bad either. When you grant super speed to a target, also grant quickness, which is not bad, but I'm preferring the adaptive armor on this build specifically. The other one you might think about is applied force. You get a little bit more stab off this. The only time, though, that I run into problems with the stab on this build in the Labyrinth is on some very extreme scenarios when I'm missing my dodges. So if you're one of those people that's missing your dodges, you might want to go with applied force, but I prefer adaptive armor on that one. Let's go down to our bar here at this point. Our bar, as I mentioned earlier, will be running Elixir H as our skill for healing. And this is pretty much non-negotiable. If you see the value that we're getting off Elixir H, it's pretty massive. Plus the cooldown reduction. It really makes this our best heal available on it. Flamethrower kit is, again, why we're running this build. You definitely want to keep this, and we're going to be camping it. We're going to be spending all of our time in Flamethrower while we're in the Labyrinth. We're going to be using rocket boots. The reason why I'm using rocket boots is for a couple of reasons. In the lab, we run into a lot of movement impairing conditions, those being chill, cripple, immob. The rocket boots are absolutely huge value. The other thing that you can use rocket boots for is catching up. And I'm going to bring this up when we go into the gameplay section, but part of maximizing your time in the Labyrinth is making sure you're at the head of the Zerg, okay? You don't want to be at the back of the Zerg. You want to be at the head just doing your tags and moving on, and this is a really good kind of gap closer catch-up mechanism, so highly going to recommend you're using that one. I like the Shredder Gyro. The Shredder Gyro is a nice little AoE that's going to tag a lot of mobs on doors. So, gonna recommend that you go with the Shredder Gyro. There are obviously other options. There are some cases where I might use even the Thumper turret on this one, but the Shredder Gyro really brings the best value to it. Doesn't do a huge amount of damage the way that we have it set up, but that really is kind of the way we want it. And finally, I like Supply Crate here. There are a few other options. The Sneak Gyro is one that you might want to use if you are running into scenarios where you are wanting to catch up a lot. But if you're maintaining your position a fair bit, the Supply Crate is going to come in handy, particularly during the boss encounters. It's going to help keep people around you alive a little bit, and since you're in the Celestial gear, it's definitely going to be of a bigger value. But it's also a stun, and that is some big CC. So in terms of the CC that we're getting off this build, this is going to be a big part of it. So I'm going to recommend that you kind of run it that way. And that is the build and the gear. Getting into our fashion on this build, you may notice a bit of a funky outfit I'm wearing. I'm actually running an outfit, and this is one of the few outfits that is available outside the gem store. So it's one of the reasons that I bring it up. It is only available at Halloween. It is, you know, your mileage may vary on how much you like that, but I think it's kind of a nice, silly Halloween effect, and I definitely usually run this one. And if we look under the outfits, the name of this is the Hexed outfit. You can absolutely get this for candy corn cobs, and I highly recommend that you do this regardless. It's never bad to have, you know, a free kind of customization option for your character. So highly going to recommend that you go ahead and do that. The only other thing to really mention on the fashion on this build is if we go over into the equipment, I'm running Sharur. Sharur is the legendary hammer. Again, I'm not going to be using the hammer much, but the reason I actually run Sharur over just about any hammer is that when we draw it at night, it's got these cool kind of effects on it, these tendrils coming off, which I actually quite enjoy, and it's a very nice effect. One of the more interesting legendaries in the game, so that is what I'm going to be running that one. Quick little check here on the dyes. We'll go over to the dyes here at this point. I am running Bloodstone Dark Violet. Bloodstone Dark Violet on this. I am running Ominous Yellow. And as the orange, I'm using Destroyer Orange. Bloodstone dye is definitely one that I highly recommend that you get into. They start dropping like candy out of birthday presents after a little while. So if you're at that point where you are getting the birthday presents, and I believe it's around the 4th birthday, you start getting dye kits that will give you the Bloodstone dyes. These Bloodstone dyes are really nice, high contrast dyes that I really recommend. The Destroyer Orange comes in the 5th birthday present. So again, you know, if you've got a lot of characters, getting some good dyes always much easier if you've got a lot of alts. So as they progress through the years, you'll see a lot more of those. Again, you know, didn't take the dye job on this one super seriously, but really kind of like the Halloweeny effect that I got off it. And that is our fashion. So let's take a few moments now and go into the Labyrinth itself and see how this all comes together. So as you can see, in terms of the gameplay on this one, we just want to try to be near the head of the Zerg at all points, moving on to the doors, and just kind of spamming 1. If we need to catch up at any point, we'll go ahead and we'll hit the rocket boots. But in a case like this, where we've got mobs coming out of the door, we'll wait until they're kind of ready to hit. Drop down like the spare capacitor or something, and just start again pressing 1 at all times. It really is about the simplest thing in the world. We never really want to get out of the Flamethrower kit for kind of any reason, so to speak. As we're just moving around, making sure we're getting a couple hits in on everything, just making sure everybody else can get their hits in as well. We'll absolutely be getting our loot at about the highest level possible without, you know, getting in the way of anybody else's performance. So it's kind of that simple. So just making sure that we are on tag at all points. And then as we're running by things, just do a couple of hits here and there. Make sure that we're hitting all the trash mobs. We'll definitely get our hits in. Making our way from one door to the next. And I really can't express to you, you know, how simple this really is, making sure that we are hitting all these things. So, again, we've got one of these doors with the trash mobs, and really all I'm going to be doing is doing a couple of hits in, hitting tab, moving on to the next target. It really is kind of simple. And as you can see, the loot's coming in at a decent rate. We're getting as many tags in as anybody else, and just kind of spreading out our damage among all the other targets. And really, that's the beauty of lab farming. I might go ahead and hit my shredder gyro at this point, just put a few more hits down. But again, we're not alpha striking. We're not nuking things down at all points. And the reason why we're not is making sure that everybody else can get their hits in as well. Kind of a simple thing. It's beautiful. So CC on this one, we do have a few options that we'll definitely go over, probably a lot more than the Shortbow Thief has, but it doesn't have the mobility of the Shortbow Thief. But let's go over our CC options here at this point. As I mentioned earlier, we have Supply Crate. Supply Crate is going to do really nice CC. You see that actually, in terms of both the hard and soft CC, completely takes out the break bar on that champion golem. It's not obviously going to do it on any of the lab bosses, but it is an exceptional amount of CC that we absolutely want to leverage. Now, the next place that we're going to get CC, okay, is in our Flamethrower kit. We'll get a little bit of CC on the 5, which is some soft CC, okay, but not great. As you saw, our really big one here is actually going to come from the Air Blast, which is the Flamethrower 3. As you see, that is an exceptional amount of CC as well. Our two other sources of crowd control are going to come off the Function Gyro. The Function Gyro is going to do a daze. That's obviously really powerful. And because we are running the Shredder Gyro, we get access to a Spare Capacitor. Now, Spare Capacitor, just lay that down. And that is some really nice CC as well. And really, that's really it. When it comes to breaking the break bar on these things, you know, you really want to obviously leverage the supply crate. It's one of the main reasons I recommend you run it, and really just kind of leave it at that. It's that simple. And there you have it, guys. That is Flamethrower NG for the Mad King's Labyrinth. It is a very targeted build for that use and that use alone. As you've seen during the gameplay section, there really is nothing that comes to beat it in terms of its simplicity. The constant stability on it is absolutely the biggest win that you can bring to the table in terms of your chill experience lab farming. And the Flamethrower just does an incredible amount of widespread damage that will absolutely make your tagging pretty easy. And that's it. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to thank you guys all very much for watching. I'm going to remind you to have fun in game and min-max your real life. I'll see you again in the mists.